the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
That's a crossroads, and that's probably a problem.
All right, moving on. This next tier. So this is, where am I on my list? Is this number 8? I have it sorted by tiers. What can we realistically expect tier? And this man by himself is Shane Beamer. 20-18, been to 2 bowl games in 3 years. It felt like he overachieved the first 2 years he was there. 1 losing season. Yeah, that's not great, but South Carolina is in such a, I don't know, difficult position here, sandwiched in between Georgia and Tennessee and Clemson and all these other just kind of budding powerhouses. I just don't really like going to bowl games pretty regularly. Like, what can South Carolina realistically expect?
Well, I think that's one of those things where I talked about it at the top of the show here, is Beamer is my number 1 for this reason. And I also think in this modern media climate where there's just so much attention, there's so many tweets, there's so many podcasts, so many videos, so many articles, that I can just see if South Carolina struggles, because their schedule is set up where they're going to take some L's early in this season. Like, how does Beamer handle that kind of start? How does, when you look around the SEC, which coach is most likely to not handle the harsh, negative media attention that is coming his program's way? And I feel like South Carolina is the number 1 pick for me in terms of most likely to combust, where you can just see the anger, the tension building up, the frustration. Like if Lenora Sellers is a huge downgrade from Spencer Rattler, like if the offense continues to struggle, because there was already some folks who didn't like the OC last year, that hire, he's back. Like, I don't know. I can just see I don't have to squint that hard to see the South Carolina Shane Beamer experience really coming to a head and having a lot of weekly problems in the press conferences after the Kentucky loss or the Florida loss or whatever, that just, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is not going well. I don't know how you run this back for 1 more year. You know what I mean? Like, I could just see this getting really uncomfortable really quickly in Columbia, because I think they're going to lose a lot of football games this fall.
Yeah, I think it'll be a personality thing if they fire him. But I mean, to this point, wins and losses wise, like, I don't even really think he should be on the hot seat. Like, I don't know what he's really supposed to do at South Carolina. Win 7-8 games. Like, yeah, he's doing it. Like, they've signed.
Just hire Dan Mullen, though. If you're South Carolina, what are you doing? Dan Mullen, just hire Dan Mullen. Don't worry about the big time.
Dan Mullen to get a less.
He raises the floor. He could do what you saw at Mississippi State. Just let him do that in Columbia for 8 years. What are you doing? He's in the area. Just hire Dan Mullen. What do you mean? That's a home run.
Really doesn't want to recruit anymore. South Carolina, Beamer signed.
You don't have to in South Carolina. What, you don't have
top 25 classes.
Who cares? Just live in the portal. Live in the portal. Let Dan Mullen cook. There's no national title expectations in South Carolina.
What Dan Mullen is. This guy doesn't even want to coach college football right now.
He's the top 3 offensive mind in the sport. Like, yes, I want Dan Mullen back. Dan Mullen's a great coach.
He was a terrible recruiter. He was not good at managing.
Who cares? He got Mississippi State to number 1 in the nation. What are we doing?
He's just coasting off that one achievement, being ranked number 1, like in start of November one time.
Give me Dan Mullen any day of the week, man. Dan Mullen's a great coach. And South Carolina would be lucky to have Dan Mullen. That's a huge upgrade. Do you not think Dan Mullen's a much better coach than Shane Beamer?
Was it Joker Phillips that got Kentucky up to number 2 that one time? He wasn't just coasting off that for another decade.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to pull up Dan Mullen's record here. Like, Dan Mullen, you're just being like, Dan Mullen is a fantastic football coach. He's 103-61 total as a head football coach. He went 10-3, 9-4, 8-4, 8-5, 9-4 at Mississippi State.
I don't know why
he had 2 double-digit win seasons at Florida, 1-8-4, and then like the 5-6 where things fell apart. But like that previous year, he was number 1 in the East. Like, what are we doing? Dan Mullen is a great football coach. Florida has been worse without Dan Mullen. Mississippi
Yeah.
State has been worse without Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen is a great college football coach. He is better than anybody that South Carolina can bring in. Like, what are we doing? That's a great home run
He
hire.
doesn't want to coach right now. I don't know why we're even talking about Dan Mullen.
I'm just saying that if you were to, if he seems like he's in that area, like if he wants to stay in the SEC, low pressure job, South Carolina might be the perfect spot for Dan Mullen.
If they could get him, that's probably an upgrade from Shane Beamer, but I don't know. I just think Shane Beamer, like at South Carolina right now, like I'm not really sure what his expectations really are. Like,
I think bowl game is the
top 20
expectation.
recruiting presence, top 20, be a top 20 recruiting type team, and go to bowl games, win 7-8 games sometimes. Like, if he's doing that, like that's as best as South Carolina can really ask for. Like, it took a Hall of Famer, 2 Hall of Famers, Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier, to have that program look like a winning program. Like, that's not what South Carolina has been in the entire history of their existence. If they got a guy that's getting to bowl games consistently, that's all they can really ask for in my book.
I don't know. I'm gonna ride with Dan Mullen here. I don't know how we got into Dan Mullen here, but
you just love Dan Mullen, so I don't know how.
I'm a big Dan Mullen guy.
A big Dan Mullen guy. My next tier.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.